What are some of the professions that are slowly dying? My father was a printer and repaired machines for free in his workplace. He the company's go-to guy and foolishly thought this ensured his job security, but nope, he was dropped after 30 plus years with no severance. Funnily enough, it was a blessing in disguise. Without a job he qualified for Medicaid, which was ironically a godsend when he was diagnosed with cancer later that year. Without Medicaid, my parents would likely be bankrupt and probably would have lost their home after paying for treatments and hospital stays. With Medicaid, everything has been covered. So in a strange way, I'm grateful. But in another way it breaks my heart to imagine how my father felt being let go after so many years of being a hard worker. It was a major part of his identity. Fuck that place, if I could burn it down without getting caught I probably would. We have a franchise cobblers in the UK called Timpsons. They've managed to stay popular by becoming good at offering a range of niche specialty services. In addition to repairing your shoes and boots, they offer locksmithing and key cutting, personalized engraving and license plates for cars among a few other things. Really knowledgeable in their trades and decent prices too. They're expensive, compared to independent cobblers in my area, if you can find one, but maybe it's a good example of well, if you want ethical practices and a good quality of employment from a large business, some of that cost is passed on to the customer. I have heard that they hire a lot of ex-cons and ex-soldiers and all their shop managers are promoted from the shop floor, so to speak, so that's very cool for a large chain. But I still go to the cobbler and key cutter on my high street because it's a family business and I feel bad for them being squeezed by Timpsons down the road. Years ago, my good work shoes started to get a little thin on the bottoms. I vaguely remembered boring old people signs from when I was a kid that mentioned shoe repair and resoling, so I figured the logical thing to do would be to go get my shoes fixed up. The tops were still good, everything was still pretty solid, I'd just worn out the solace with all that walking and working. The folks in the shop looked at me like I was insane. Like they were holding in laughter and trying not to shout, "What are you, 93? Just go buy new ones, stupid." They were still good shoes. I didn't need entirely new shoes. I'm sick of living in a just throw it away and buy a new one style society. Certain types of shoes can't easily be resold like that. In fact, most shoes sold today are not resolvable because of the way we make them now. Look up Goodyear welted shoes. You can resole them when they wear through. But you also aren't getting a pair of GYW shoes for under $100. Almost all of my shoes are GWY now, but they aren't cheap. I have 2 pairs of boots and they ran me over $300 each. You invest a bit more up front with the knowledge that if you take care of them they can last you decades and you have a higher quality product than buying a new pair every year or two. There are still cobblers around that will resole it, and even ones online you can ship to. Allen Edmonds is generally considered the entry to mid-level GYW shoe in the US, and they advertise a resoling service as a major benefit of buying their shoes. Photo lab technician. I've worked in a few different photo labs, and with the move to digital there really isn't a need for people who work with film. Edit, I should have clarified I was talking about wet labs specifically. I personally haven't seen any new places pop up for developing film, and I've lived in big and small cities over the years. I definitely agree with the people saying it's a niche market. I can't see it ever being as popular as it once was, and I definitely do see it completely dying out as technology continues to advance at such a fast rate. That being said, I do hope I'm wrong. Working in a lab to this day is the best and most rewarding job I've had. Sewing machine technicians. The two older gents that service mine are amazing, been doing it most of their lives. They're lovely people and extraordinarily knowledgeable, but they're wanting to retire and there's no one to take on their business. They've tried to find apprentices but no one is interested despite them being in pretty high demand. The precision engineering in my industrial and domestic machines is extraordinary and it makes me so sad that if they go wrong I might never find anyone to fix them. Edit typo. I just had this conversation today, so this is definitely weird to see. My best friend is a sewing machine mechanic. His parents own a quilt/fabric shop and sell from basic to top-of-line sewing equipment and he is their professional mechanic. Almost every machine he works on has been worked on by someone who thinks they can just pop a cover off and fix a machine. He almost always gets machines with screws in the wrong places and the tension messed up. After they figure out they can't do it, they end up taking it to the shop and having to pay him to do double the work. My friend used to clip the metal springy bits on the inside of an I/O shield. The ones that make contact with all the ports and, I believe, ground them to the case. At the time I told him it was a dumb thing to do, but I didn't know why, so couldn't argue effectively. He did it 'cause he just couldn't be bothered to align them whenever he put the mobo in, especially when in a rush. We were assembling 50 computers that day too, so half had clipped I/O shields and the other half had decent cable management. Guess who that place hired on to maintain those computers? Not me. If you like the area in which you live, check out what machine shops exist within a desirable commute. If you are lucky, there will be a well-run shop that doesn't have an in-house technician. There are plenty of good shops that don't have a tech. Unless the shop is very large, they'll have one particular brand they carry. Think of them like car dealerships, which is reasonable considering how complex and expensive the top-of-the-line machines can run. $15,000, so you would start out learning to service the one brand. You get to work with your hands in a relaxed environment, make people happy. Edit. My wife says there are plenty of training programs and you can work as an independent contractor who services for multiple shops in the area. She also says if you are in Ohio or want to move there to let me know. She would love to have someone to take on and train as a technician for her business. Source: my wife is an owner of a quilting/sewing shop, selling Bernina machines, and is the technician for them, in addition to marking/online stuff, which is what she actually likes and would like to find someone to train as the tech to take over. Because in 10 years' time, computers will run everything. As an IT guy, I hate so much that notion. You see companies putting little screens and internet connections everywhere. Say whatever you want, your freezer has no business having an operating system. So many people are so wrong about what AI can or can't do, or what AI should do. You can see it in minor stupid things like Discord not allowing you to comment perfectly innocent pics because it thinks they're NSFW. It's funny because most people who oppose to AI believe it will evolve into literally Skynet. Nah, computers will never have the wits for that. The real apocalyptic AI scenario is society collectively giving every daily decision to the machines, becoming increasingly stupid and dependent. Like the people at the spaceship in WALL-E. If the majority of stations weren't iHeart affiliates, maybe radio would be better. I love radio when you can hear some B tracks and local flavor along with the hits, but when it's all top 40 or the same 60 songs from the 80s, it can get old. I miss radio the way I described it, as well as DJs that really made you feel plugged into the community. Every once in a while I'm in a small town where the radio is still like that, and it's such a breath of fresh air. I love hearing about the local high school sports matches alongside ads for the fish bait and tackle shop. What killed morning show people was podcasting and YouTube. Anyone who is even remotely funny/entertaining has moved there. The only radio DJ personalities who are left are already famous, too old to understand the new tech, or are just not good enough to make it. I worked on a cloud migration project for a radio station. The on-air talent made $3 over minimum wage and most of them were part-time. Patreon and YouTube AdSense can top that pretty easily. This is sadly true. A good friend of mine, the man is a computer genius, and literally anything electronic he's learned how to repair and work them. Sometimes I go to his garage, he helps me repair my laptop, and tells me how he used to make more money in a week, repairing stuff for people than he would in a month's salary. Sadly, over the years, with shit being cheaper to buy new than to repair, he barely makes anything. He has his regular job, in a library, but his skills are really underappreciated and he could be doing something way better. He'd make a fantastic teacher, but at his age I don't think he really up for it. The Japanese government heavily subsidizes their country's traditional artisans under its Living National Treasure program, most of whom are self-employed. I believe this subsidizing includes quite a lot of promotion and free advertising, which takes the form of human interest stories in the media, and spotlights in tourist guides. I'm pretty sure the Japanese Ministry of Culture even has a hub to connect willing apprentices with artisans looking to pass on their trade. Does the Italian government have a program like this for traditional artisans? With as old and rich an arts and crafts culture and massive tourism industry as Italy has, I can't imagine the government not being very invested in supporting these old codgers. Having worked in a call center in the past, I can tell you a huge reason why these phone trees are so popular is because no call center wants to staff appropriately for their highest volume of calls. Because if they did that when volume goes down, they are wasting money on the staff that aren't actively taking calls. Anyone who has worked in one of these places is facing back-to-back calls with maybe a couple minutes in between to notate an account. They're also often expected to provide optimal one-call resolution service, while also getting the customer off the line within 5 minutes, or it could hurt their KPIs. Movie theater projectionist. I wouldn't say dying so much as dead. TLDR, digital projection made the projectionist obsolete within just a few years. This post is a little on the long side for anyone who is interested in how this profession became obsolete. Prior to the conversion to digital in the 2010s, the true movie theater projectionist was already mostly obsolete. Most multi-screen theaters started using a platter system in the 1980s. This allowed the multiple reels of a movie to be assembled into one really long reel which could be played from start to finish without any action from a human. This eliminated the need for a dedicated projectionist, since just about anyone could be trained to thread the film through the projector and press start. Of course, this had a negative impact on equipment maintenance and presentation quality. But it saved a fair chunk of money, since dedicated projectionists usually belonged to a union and were paid much more than other theater staff. Still, you needed a human to build up the movie, assemble the reels, and tear down the movie, disassemble the reels, and a person had to thread the projector and periodically check it to make sure there were no problems. I can tell you from personal experience that cleaning up a thrown or tangled film print is one of the most frustrating and time-consuming things to deal with. Through the early 2000s, the theater industry was slowly starting the process of rolling out digital. It proceeded very slowly as technology was improved. By the mid to late 2000s, the technology had improved to the point where a 2048x1080 resolution projection system was roughly comparable to the quality of the average 35mm release print. This started the transition, but was mostly confined to a few screens in the biggest theaters. Around this time, studios started to release digital 3D movies. At first it was just a handful of releases, with mixed results. Then Avatar was released in 2009 in 3D and it totally changed the game. The success of Avatar in 3D, in part due to the upcharges, made many movie theaters realize they were leaving money on the table by not being able to show 3D. This resulted in the first big wave of conversions where theaters were racing to get a couple 3D-capable auditoriums. Within a year or two the studios started seeing the cost savings in not having to produce 35mm, so they entered into agreements with movie theaters to help fund the full conversion to digital via payments called virtual print fees. Essentially they paid the theater for the cost savings of not having to produce 35mm prints, about $1,000 per print. By about 2012 the conversion had accelerated to the point that it was now an existential choice to convert or go out of business. By around 2015 the number of 35mm prints for any given movie had decreased to no more than a dozen or so, with many movies not having any. Today the average movie theater projection system is completely automated. It requires no human action besides turning on equipment in the morning and turning it off at night. Working on the digital equipment is more like working on a computer than a film movie projector. Today the only place you will find projectionist is a handful of repertory theaters which are playing film prints from a vault, either a studio or private collection. And there are a handful still working in Hollywood and handling the projection for the few directors who still shoot on film. As someone who spent 25 years working in movie theaters, I understand the nostalgia for people who appreciated the art of film projection. As a theater manager, until 2 months ago, I greatly appreciated the flexibility and simplicity that came with the conversion to digital. As a movie watcher, I really appreciate the consistency of presentation from digital. No more prints with scratches and dust spots. I used to work at a movie theater. Once they went digital, someone was in the projection room only for a half hour to an hour every Thursday. The movies came on hard drives that get plugged into our server. All someone needed to do every Thursday when the new movies come in, is to just take out movies going out, and put in the new ones, and then program in which movie is being played in which screen, and the times, and that's it. We actually go the main controls downstairs in the front office, so if everything runs correctly, that one time on Thursday is the only time anyone is up there. Scientific glass blowing. I work in a lab that uses tons of custom glass parts for our sampling flasks and analysis racks, and anything that breaks needs to be repaired quickly and precisely. Young people go into glass blowing to make bongs and sculptures and chandeliers, but never the technical stuff. All the scientific glass blowers in my area are 70 plus with health issues and they can't find apprentices. Crazy thing is that you can charge $15,000 for a cannabis film still and it's only about $2,000 in raw glass parts, so there's a huge untapped market out there. And shipping glass long distance is obviously risky, so we need these guys localized and knowledgeable. I was a newspaper journalist from 2005 to 2015. We actually did try to adapt. I learned how to edit video in 2007 and we complemented written pieces with short video. What I noticed in my experience was that large organizations like hedge fund companies bought out local newspapers and made money, are still making money, off slowly suffocating the newspapers, laying people off regularly, not providing proper resources. So, of course, subscriptions and readership are going down, from lack of a quality product and general trends with changes in media / how people don't read newspapers / pay for newspapers. And these large corporations will continue to make decisions with these newspapers based on profit and not on serving the community. Local journalism is dying.